I don't think anyone's out of the teens if you've made it to the teens, but very cold February morning. I have some of my me today, and I'll just let them go around the room and introduce themselves. And I'll start to my right.
Missy Smith with the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources.
Good morning, Ginger Huffman, Office of Special Programs. Good morning, Monica Delamay, Office of Early Learning.
And I'm Janet Bach-Hager. I'm the pre-K coordinator in the Office of Early Learning. All right, so let's get started. A couple things that I just wanted to discuss. For those of you who've been around for a while, this is not new information, but based on surveys and information that we've obtained through pre-K program reviews and what you all voice as, the things that you would really like to explore and have some updated information. Our third and final webinar for the system of support for this school year is on collaborations and budgets. I do want to just let you all know that, one of the things as we talk today about collaborations and budgets is that working as partners and trying to calculate and get things down on paper sometimes becomes a challenge when you're trying to fit it in a tool that has been around for quite a long time. So I just want to let you know that we are working with a team of representatives that include fiscal folks, pre-K coordinators, collaborative partners throughout the state to look at the budget form and revise that. So we're really, we're looking at that and to revise the collaboration document that we'll refer to this morning too. We want to make sure that it's in line with current policy and is provided in a way that's easy to complete as a tool for you all when you have to go through the process of budgets and contracts. So that's coming down the pike, but the policy and the intent doesn't change. So we just want to talk about the overview of how all of this comes about and how Policy 2525 does guide that process. So everything, at the crux of everything, all things collaborative is the core team. And, Policy 2525 in Section 4 is what I call it is the anchor of the rest of the policy. And our team has really looked at how do we articulate the collaborative process as the core process. And in policy, a county collaborative core team must be established. And as you can see on the graphic, there are required members of the core team. And they're responsible for everything else in the policy. Once this team is together and their charge is to assess and develop a full team to assist in the process of ensuring that Policy 2525 is met. And the collaborative policies are also included in that as well. So you have to have a core team, and then you have a full team. Now, what we know about full teams is that it's a very fluid process. Full team members they vary based on the dynamics of a community, based on the resources available in a county. But there are some key folks that really need to be a part of that, and those include a parent of a preschool child. And when you look at a core team, a child care representative needs to be on that core team. If there isn't a child care in your community, then the local DHHR representative must be on that core team. Then a DHHR rep can also be a part of the full team as well. And then there are some others that are listed in policy. But there are some that included that aren't listed in the policy too. These include WEVIS representatives, nutrition coordinators, programs that are unique to your county, for instance, Early Head Start, other home visiting programs.
Or maybe even attendance coordinators or directors at the county level?
It depends, you know, on what the dynamics of your program look like. So it takes a lot of organization in order to make sure that the folks that really can be great contributors to the early childhood community are at the table, and it's a balance of really looking at where, you know, when is it the most appropriate time for you to extend an invitation for folks that may not participate all the time, for you to encourage them to come be a part of the full team. One of the other ones is classroom teachers. But, you know, classroom teachers have such a valuable voice, but they don't always have to be at a meeting if, you know, they don't want to be pulled from their classrooms if you're talking about, you know, janitorial services or things like that.
But that'd be a good example for principals to be invited to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much principals.
And I know that we could brainstorm lots of folks who at some point would be a part of this full team. And so we just want you to, as a core team and as a full team, really critically analyze on a regular basis who's on that full team, and is there anyone missing from the full team? In fact, the policy says that it should be assessed annually. Because you have some major program outcomes that you really need to address that are ongoing throughout the year. They're also the crux of what should be in your collaborative agreement. And I just want to take a few minutes just to look at those. When you look at Section 4 under collaboration of the policy, there are 9 key areas that are included in the policy. This was done very intentionally by that large stakeholders group so that those 9 indicators really do fan out into the rest of the policy. You can basically look at these 9 key areas and link it to every other section of the policy. And that was done with very intentionally to make sure that, you know, those key things are addressed, and those are the things that are also needed in interagency agreements and collaborative agreements. The location of the West Virginia pre-K classroom, that is one of the first charges of or outcomes of the core team. Sharing joint decisions about sharing resources and information. This includes staffing, facilities, food service, transportation, those key things in order to run the program smoothly. Program availability, including instructional days, hours, and the pre-K calendar. One of the new things in policy since we've had any discussion, a large group discussion about policy, is that the school calendar must be approved by the local board. That's one thing that was added into the revisions of Policy 2525 in 2014. So that calendar, which has to meet the needs of collaborative programs, has to be approved by that county school system. The next is universal enrollment process and attendance guidelines. The core team really has to look at the universal enrollment process and attendance and link those to the whole program and all of the collaborative partners to ensure that you're meeting the requirements of each program. And then services for children with identified special needs. That relates back up to 14.3a and C about program availability too. So you can link them within the program outcomes do overlap. You have to make sure that you're providing the services as appropriate to the community with which you work.
And also you have to think about those children that are identified West Virginia birth to 3, because those transitions happen throughout the year at any time. So you also have to think about, excuse me, how you're planning for those kids during the school year.
The other, the last three pieces, the last three program outcomes that you really have, that really drive other areas of the outcomes too, is continuous quality improvement process. Collection of data to determine any changes that you need to make, what you're doing well and what you really need to keep. The results from what classroom observations, child outcome data, external reviews, you have to have a formal process in place that really uses that data to make decisions. You're going to make decisions about programming potentially based on your continuous quality improvement process. You're going to make decisions about staff development. You're going to make recommendations within your program and within the pre-K program and then to the more global school system based on needs of pre-K. Your voice has to be channeled through the use of data to really be an agent of change where you need to change the program. So the continuous quality improvement process is an integral piece of all of this and really does provide us that source of information to make those programmatic changes that you do need to make. And that directly ties back into school readiness goals and transition plans. School readiness goals should be based on what your CQI process is telling you. If it's telling you that you need more parent engagement because that is an agent of children's success, then that could be a part of your school readiness goal that's linked to the whole process. And the transition plans we know are integral in the success for children into and out of the program. And then the last one is a dispute resolution process. You should have a process in place to ensure that when you reach impasses as a core team and as a full team, you have provisions to help you overcome that hurdle. That recently had a 3-step communication process included in their collaborative contract and as a part of their overall system. That's a formal process that says, okay, when we get to this, when we struggle, these are the steps we're going to take. And I think that lays a really good foundation for how to overcome hurdles that you encounter. So we have to ensure that all of these outcomes are met. But as you can see on the screen, the one thing that is probably the most challenging is that all the partners who come to the table bring requirements with them. Mm-hmm. It is best to articulate how to meet those individual requirements through collaborative agreements. So when should you really look at collaborative agreements and begin the process, the annual process? Well, it depends on when you do things in your county that contribute to this. Enrollment plays a big part on the contracts. When do you do enrollment? There are some other things that you would want to consider. With the enrollment process, you can determine where classrooms are needed. Is there a shift that needs to take place? Do we have a large population in one area that you didn't have before? So that really does play a big role in ensuring that when your contracts really get started. Most counties have a contract process in place that they feel is really foundational and strong. So a lot of times annually this is renewing based on new data from your continuous quality improvement process. And I just kind of wanted to talk for a minute about this cycle that is constantly happening in pre-K. You have your program outcomes. That's your goal. You know, those are the things you know you want to do to provide quality services to children and families. The collaborative agreements they make those, so they put them in writing for you. The continuous quality improvement drives that process, and then the budgets and program oversight are as integral in this process to meet those program outcomes. So the best time to start, let's start with the end in mind. In policy, verification of annual collaborative contracts and budgets must be signed and on file at the County Board of Education, noting the collaborative universal pre-K classrooms for the upcoming year. This has to be in place prior to the first day of children's attendance. With that, what counties have to do is provide a letter to the Office of Early Learning that says we do have contracts and budgets on file and in place, signed, for the following collaborative partners. So every year prior to the first day of school, every county must have that verification of signed contracts and budgets. It also goes on to say that program data verification must be completed on September 1st of each year. Now this process was a little delayed this year as we implemented the West Virginia Pre-K OEL.WVPK app through WEVIS. So we do our verification prior to this year. We did them on an Excel spreadsheet. Everybody sent them in. This year it was done through the WEVIS platform. And I will let you know at this point we're working on generating county reports so that you have class lists with all of that information. And we're finalizing that process. We want to thank all of you for being so patient as we transitioned into the online platform for entering this information. There will be a few tweaks to make sure that it's as seamless as possible, and we'll share that with you at the beginning of June to really streamline that information. And then you can get reports, run class lists, and have that available to share after that. But that will be due September 1st of each year. Without a contract, without a signed contract, it's really difficult to do data verification because you can't verify that you have a classroom in place if you don't have a signed contract in place. So those are really reliant on one another, and it's key that the process is initiated and completed prior to the first day of school so that the classroom data verification can happen. Because we all know that it rolls up on that October 1st headcount deadline, which is directly tied to the funding. So all of this is contingent upon itself. So the collaborative agreements, a couple of things that should accompany those agreements as you put them in place. Teacher and assistant teacher credentials. Every teacher or assistant teacher who has a temporary authorization, it expires on June 30th. Teachers and assistant teachers do not have to wait and are strongly encouraged not to wait until their authorizations expire to renew. They can renew as soon as they have completed their coursework that is required to renew. They can go ahead and start the process. If that's in January, they can renew they can start that process in January. Because the Office of Professional Preparation indicates in all of their documentation that it can take up to 90 days to complete the approval process for a temporary authorization, and that's without any issues with fingerprints or payment or anything like that. So it's really key that those folks get that happening and have their new certificates in place on July 1st, because those should really come in with the collaborative agreements. Every collaborative partners need to know that the person in their classroom, as the teacher or the assistant teacher, holds the correct credentials. And that's with all partners. Everyone needs to know that they're meeting that. We have a question. What if they are just now taking the first course for temporary authorization? As soon as they finish the course, they can do the renewal process. So as soon as they're finished, which if they're just now taking, if they're taking an e-learning course, it will be finished in 15 weeks. Then, so 15 weeks from now is May. In May, they should begin the paperwork for renewal. They can't renew until they have proof that they've completed coursework, though. So you want to immediately after they get the documentation to show that, then they should begin that process.
Yeah, that piece that Janice talked about is real important. As I notice, we do a lot of the program reviews, that this is something that's easy for teachers, because we're all so busy and things get, you get overwhelmed at times, that people lose track of these dates. And then you find yourself at the end of the year going, I don't have it, you don't have a teacher that meets the requirements. So you really need some sort of tracking sheet or a tickler file or however you want to set it up in terms of the certifications and the temporary authorizations and the different types of forms that they have in the county, because we have found this several times as we've done the reviews, and it has really put some counties in a bind in terms of having those qualified teachers in those classrooms, and they've had to really rethink their programming. So as your partnership, I mean both teams or whoever, the Head Start folks, you need some sort of way to be able to jointly track that, so that way you don't end up in that situation.
The other thing is that it's the responsibility of the core team. You've determined your program structure. Ideally, you've determined your program structure based on your community needs. And this kind of, like Ginger said, it kind of throws a wrench into the system when you have to find someone who meets the qualifications. So, this is, while we want to encourage staff to be responsible for their licensure, we also, support them in that process. I always tell folks to treat it like a driver's license. You don't wait until it's expired to renew it. Other agreements that may be included, I need to go back, I'm jumping the gun. The other piece that must accompany this are classroom budgets. Those classroom budgets help determine how the funding is going to support the implementation of policy. So those have to accompany, and figuring out the budgets it doesn't happen in one meeting. It happens over time. So going back to that question, when should we start this process? You should start the process now for next year. And finalizing can happen a little later. Honestly, I would be nervous past May not having a draft being prepared, because collaborative agreements have to be reviewed and approved by county boards of education. Other governing boards have to review and approve those as well. And you have to allow enough time to have those completed and ready to go. And that's your plan of action for that school year. Those contracts are your plan of action. that illustrates your outcomes. And then there may be some other documentation that you would include in your collaborative agreement. That's a local decision. Another consideration are nutrition agreements. Oftentimes, nutrition agreements are in place with the nutrition coordinator for the county with programs. Sometimes they're together, sometimes they're separate. But if you don't know about your county's nutrition agreement, you really should know about what that means, just for information or to be able to refer to the appropriate person too. But oftentimes, that core team is the person who connects others to the preschool program. So knowing about what is in a nutrition agreement is very helpful to the core team. A couple things we just want to point out and discuss, just a reminder, is when you have a complete agreement, is it signed by both partners? Is a copy on file at the LEA? Does the other partner have an official copy? And that's when the notification should come to the Office of Early Learning, to the pre-K coordinator, saying, yes, we have signed contracts and budgets in place. So I just want to take you just for a minute onto the Office of Early Learning's website, and wow, having some, oops, there we go. Under Universal Pre-K, if you go to County Collaborative Team Resources, you can find lots of resources here to help counties in their process of collaboration. One of the one that's been used, and we're working on revisions right now based on policy revisions and based on some recommendations from our audience. But right now, what we have in place is the Pre-K Partnership Collaborating with Community Partners book, and it is a wealth of information, especially if you're a new core team member, that really will guide you on how to get started. It has a sample of a contract and lots of things. Like I said, we will be revisiting this as with the upcoming year. The other piece on this page is the budget template that I guess it's been around since the dawn of pre-K, and we've heard from you all that there are some things that you struggle with when you're putting this together. So we've heard that, and we have a committee that's really going to look at that. So let's talk about budgets and finance. It's a lengthy process to put all this together, but I just want to kind of point out what the policy says. Each county board of education shall enroll pre-K children in community classrooms and generate funding through the school aid formula. That's why classroom budgets are so important, because ultimately that school aid funding that is generated must illustrate how it is being invested into the pre-K program and how it to meet all the requirements that are in place. So when you look at this and you know that under policy 2525 that the funds should support this process, where can you turn? How can you get guidance? You can, if your program has a fiscal manager, include them in this process. Include the Office of School Finance. One thing that some folks really want access to and information, and This will be on the website, on the System of Support website. But I just want to show you all, our Office of School Finance has provided us with a total estimated allowance for early childhood programs county by county. Like I said, this will be placed on the website for the System of Support webinars, so those who want to access this webinar at a later time can access this, and the PowerPoint will be there, and also this budget form. It's really important to understand, though, that this, based on the October 1st head count, we have the enrollment county by county and the state at the bottom, and then the school aid funding per pupil, and then the total. One thing you really need to understand about this process, though, is that if you look at the school aid funding per child, the per pupil amount, it varies county by county. Some of this depends on local contributions to the school aid funding for the whole school system. So while it looks like, if you look, for instance, at Barbara and Berkeley, it looks like they get more money per preschool child. That's a little deceiving. Basically, what they're what this is saying is that's the estimated total contribution. This could include a school levy that includes school-wide school levy, not specifically earmarked for pre-K. So in the total school budget, that money could be earmarked for something else as defined by the levy. So you have to take the information with a grain of salt and understand that it doesn't always equal that precise amount. This is a total estimated number. So we wanted to just point that out. All right, so with finance, the other thing that you must consider is that when children receive services for pre-K in other classrooms outside of these school systems, the school aid funding that follows those children must be accounted for. And so when a child care center is working to provide programming, they have to meet all the policies, all the standards in Policy 2525. So with that, that money will help them meet those needs, to pay for a qualified teacher, to provide the environment and materials that they need in order to effectively implement the curriculum and to meet the standards. So budget sheets not only are the game plan for how the program is going to roll out, but it's also accountability for how you're using state dollars to implement a program. When you sign a collaborative contract as a community partner, you're saying, I'm taking these dollars and I'm utilizing them to ensure that I'm providing high-quality services. Just a couple of notes with that. In child care, that time frame for pre-K is being supported by school aid funding. Therefore, private tuition cannot be charged during those hours. That's considered part of the free public education time. So on the time frame on your collaborative contract, you have to make sure that any tuition that's charged for families are outside of those hours of preschool. And then finally, in addition to the resources provided for the pre-K collaborative program, community programs bring federal and state funding as well, such as Head Start and child care development funds. Missy, do you want to add anything about that?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right, so every year on September 1st, each pre-K coordinator is responsible for providing a summary, a financial summary. In the Program Assessment and Continuous Quality Improvement section, in Section 18 of Policy 2525, it says a comprehensive fiscal report will be submitted annually on September 1st. And I just kind of wanted to go over some of what they have to report on. That way everyone knows how this process falls into play. Because basically, falls into place. Basically, our legislators and federally, we have to report total spending on pre-K. And this needs to be accurate based on what you all have determined the cost to be. And of course, the cost can't be more than the revenue. So pre-K coordinators on September 1st have to take those classroom budgets every year and guidance from their fiscal folks, and they have to report school aid funding, how much money was generated through preschool special needs or IDEA funds, any Title I dollars that have been earmarked or utilized for pre-K, Head Start contributions, any schools that have SBA funds, if the school building authority has allotted money and pre-K is impacted by that, that is counted as well. And then TANF and child care dollars, and this includes the CCDF money. And so with all of these contributions, each county comes up with a total. And that total is the pre-K spending for that county. And then we take that and get a state amount. And we say this is a total estimate of what's being spent in pre-K in West Virginia. Finally, let's talk a little bit about program oversight, because I think that this is a piece of a part of the policy that really isn't oversight sometimes, for lack of better word.
Sometimes dropped off.
Yeah, but you know, each county core team really does need to look at how you oversee all of the things that you've put in contracts and in budgets. When you sign those contracts, you're signing on that you agree to do this collaboratively. And so that you must have a process in place to ensure that those happen. Your continuous quality improvement process folds into this. And based on the provisions for oversight, that should drive any adjustments that you need to make and guide that process annually. So I think we wanted to kind of finish it with program oversight and talk about what it does say in that section. It's such a small section that it does get overlooked, but basically, you know, the first part of it says you need to make sure that you have a process that really does look at when you do have when you have struggles, or you have to have provisions in place to prevent the struggles. And those, you know, those include making sure that all of the pieces of your contract are being met from all partner sides.
And clear.
Yeah, and this program oversight decisions may be made from external reviews and reports, through federal Head Start reviews, through OEPA monitoring. Collaborative classrooms are all subject to those, you know, on an individual basis. So we wanted to just go generally through this process with you. And now just ask if anyone has questions about some of the content that we went over. Well, if we want to end with, when does rollover occur within WEVIS for grade promotion?
July 1. Okay, it's Monica.
Read the question.
The question is, when does rollover occur within WVIS for grade promotion? When can we enter our pre-K students for the next year? Our enrollment is in February, but we won't be able to put them in until summer. Is that correct? And so basically what happens after the beginning of the next fiscal year, after July 1, is that your WVIS county coordinator will run promotion. And it's not a guarantee that it happens on July 1, but that's up to the WVIS county contact. So you'll want to check with your county WVIS person and find out when he or she plans to run promotion. After that point in time, then you'll be able to put those children in for that school year. Now, there is a way, and this is also a question that you would ask of your WVIS contact, there is a way to go ahead and put them in during this fiscal year and code them so that they will be reflected in for the following fiscal year. I don't know how to do that, but your county contact certainly will. So it's not like you have to wait until after promotion is run in order to do all of that process for enrollment of children.
Okay, another question.
You're welcome, Lori.
Another question. If you know that your assistant teacher in a collaborative program is going to quit or retire, how soon can you start getting a credential for the next person? A person cannot apply for a temporary or permanent authorization until they've been hired. They have 2 years in a collaborative model to obtain that. So they have time once they're hired, and they'll just start out with the temporary authorization and then can work towards the permanent. So they can't take e-learning courses either unless they are hired and as an early childhood classroom assistant teacher, or ECAT, as we say here at the office.
As if they're in a different classroom, but it may not be collaborative classroom, but they're already working. Could they apply?
If they're hired as a teacher in a kindergarten or pre-K classroom, yeah, they can. Technically, they can't begin the process for the credential until they're hired as the assistant teacher in that position. Another question. One of my school secretaries, this is a comment. One of my school secretaries does this every year. She's going to work with the rest. Helps the system go much smoother when school starts in August.
Right.
The question was, does an assistant teacher have to be finished with the ACDS before they can be hired? No, they can begin the process upon hire. In fact, in order to be in the ACDS, you would have to be working in an early childhood setting. You know, sometimes they come with that because they've worked in another early childhood setting, but to meet the ACDS standards, they have to be working in a classroom. And for the e-learning courses, it's the same scenario. You have to be working in an early childhood setting, or in a pre-K or kindergarten setting, in order to take those e-learning courses. The coursework in both programs and for the CDA, for all three options, the coursework requires work with children, and the homework is related, and the activities that you do to meet the course requirements are related to work with children. So if you don't work in a preschool or kindergarten classroom, you wouldn't be able to complete the course anyway. So really, once they're hired, that's when the process really begins. They start with a temporary authorization, and then they immediately begin their work towards permanent authorization. And thank you for your comments, Brenda. Those are very helpful. So they can be hired as a collaborative assistant teacher in a pre-K without having finished the ACDS. Yes, they can be hired into that position without having started the ACDS, but they immediately need to choose one of the paths, one of the 3 pathways. When they complete that Form 41 in that process, they have to choose one of the pathways, e-learning, ACDS, or CDA, and then they begin that process.
They have to be credentialed.
No, they
have to work towards that.
Yes, they have to work towards the permanent authorization.
Any other questions? Is there any other questions?
Can they Brenda Bowie asked, can they change pathways midway? Well, if you run into this scenario with an assistant teacher, a couple of things that really need to be considered. In a collaborative classroom with Head Start, they only have 2 years to complete the process. So can they meet that requirement would be the question. And then for all others, it's within, they can renew, for those who are not in Head Start collaborations, they can renew twice. So they only have 1 or 2 renewals before they can't meet the requirements for the permanent authorization. So it may be able to be done, but I would really caution you to look at timelines through that process. Yeah. I really wish Rhonda was here. She is the expert at this.
I had to be at a off-site today at a meeting. So
yeah. Any other questions? Well, this will be posted along the recording, the PowerPoint, and the school aid funding form will be posted on the System of Support webinar series page for those of you who want to access that and for those who couldn't join us today. If you do have other questions about this, we always encourage you to contact one of the members of the pre-K steering team, and we're always happy to look at your individual scenarios alongside of you. So we'll end our webinar. Oh, I think we have a hand raised before we end. We do. Marlene Midget. Marlene, I don't know how long your hand was raised, so I'm going to unmute you. And if you have a question, you can go ahead and ask it. Marlene?
Hi, Jenna. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. My question was, and you may have already answered it, if I have a person who has an ACDS, but they're not working in a pre-K classroom at this time, they can apply for that position. And is there anything else they need to do?
Yes, they will actually come in, and when they're hired, they can, if they have the certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor, they can actually apply for a permanent authorization.
The Form 40.
Yeah, through the Form 41, they would just check that they're applying for permanent authorization rather than temporary.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jen.
Mm-hmm. And again, Marlene, I'm sorry if your hand was raised and we missed it for a while. All right. Well, we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day, and you all have a good Friday the 13th.
Jinx.